I'd like to focus on another genre in the English literature that was very quickly developing in the 16th century, and that's the genre of drama. So, drama was not exactly a new genre in the 16th century. It had appeared earlier, and now let's trace the forms that it had taken. You can see the types of drama in the screen. So the first type of drama that appeared in England was religious plays, and that's actually not surprising, as you probably remember from your culture studies. Drama actually started in ancient Greece, and it began as a religious thing there as well. So the first dramas were religious ceremonies in England too. They were performed in the church by the clergy, the church people. Those dramas typically presented some episodes of the life of Jesus Christ or lives of some saints, and they were usually performed on religious holidays. Also, it was typical for those religious plays to contain many choral elements. Uh, However, as time went by, those religious plays started to develop from ceremonies into performances. So they passed from the street into, they passed from the church into the street, and so more people could observe them. And then some new topics started to appear in those plays. So that's how morality plays appeared. Morality plays, as the name actually indicates, were meant to teach people a moral lesson. So they focused on the morally good and bad things, on some moral and ethical problems. And it was really typical for those morality plays to contain a number of allegories representing vices and virtues, пороки и добродетели. So the stylistic device of allegory means that an abstract idea is represented in the form of a human being. So those vices and virtues, abstract ideas, were presented as if they were characters. So they look like people, and they could act, and they could talk and think. And that was really typical for the plays of those times. But as you can guess, both religious plays and morality plays were really serious, so they demanded a certain effort on the part of the audience to follow the plot, and that's why when two or more plays were performed on the same day, very short breaks started to be introduced between them, which were called interludes. That's the third kind of drama that appeared in England. Interludes were really short plays, and unlike religious plays and morality plays, they did not present any serious topics, but instead their main aim was just to please the audience, to help them relax for a moment, and to make them laugh before they could concentrate again on something more serious and follow a new religious or morality play. However, interludes quickly became really popular, and soon they were performed in the houses of the more intelligent people. Another kind of drama that appeared was called masques. It appeared a bit later. Masques were longer plays. They typically presented the life of shepherds and shepherdesses, пастухи и пастушки, and masques traditionally presented the life in the countryside in an idyllic way. So there were no serious problems in masques. They they just focused on the lifestyle, and they contained many musical elements with singing. And also the costumes for masks were very thoroughly developed. So in a way, we can guess that masks were kind of like musicals nowadays. They don't have any serious problems, but they are very pleasant to look at. They have nice costumes and a lot of singing. But soon the plays started to become more complicated. Actually, from the very beginning, those more complicated plays were developed into comedies and tragedies, and the first English tragedies and comedies were performed in London in about 1550. So, in the middle of the 16th century, drama started to become more serious, and because of that, the first professional actors appeared because those comedies and tragedies required a certain professionalism. So those first actors traveled from one town to the next one and performed in some public places like inn yards or market squares. But the first permanent playhouse was built in London in the year 1576, and it was just called the Theatre. But a better known theatre was the Globe, which was built in the year 1599. There were some things that well, did not seem that would not seem traditional to a modern theatre goer. For example, there was no curtain in those first playhouses, and there was no scenery either. So the place of the action was just signaled by a special note raised up by one of the actors. So this note would typically say something like a palace or London or the forest, and the audience just had to imagine the background for themselves. So let's take a look at the Globe now. And let's analyze what it looked like. Those first theatres were all built following the same model, so when we speak about the Globe Theatre, we can say the same about all the other theatres of those times. And we should also say that those first theatres actually imitated inn yards, which were typical for the traveling actors. So that probably explains their unusual form. Those first theatres were round-shaped, and this part over here would be called galleries and boxes. This means rows of seats, so you can guess that they were quite expensive, and they were mostly used by the bourgeoisie and the aristocracy who came to the theatre. And this part over here is the stage, and the other part of the inner circle is called the yard or the pit, and it's the area for groundlings. So that's another thing that's really unusual for modern theaters. The area for groundlings means the cheapest seats. Actually, the tickets to the yard were really cheap, and it was, according to the historians, it was something like 10% of a day's wages. So virtually anyone could afford to go to the theatre from time to time, even town workers or peasants. And these places were so cheap because they were not really convenient. For once, there were no seats actually. The yard was a standing part of the theatre, so the groundlings had to stand throughout the whole performance. And another reason was, another inconvenience, was that there was no roof over this part of the theatre, so galleries and boxes were protected with a roof, and there was a special roof over the stage, but there was no roof at all over the yard. It was just under the open sky, so if the weather became nasty, which actually happens very often in England, it was quite unpleasant for the groundlings to stand there. But anyway, these places were really popular, and even nowadays, if you come to the Globe Theatre, which still exists, the guide will definitely recommend you to visit a performance there, to go for a play by Shakespeare, and to buy the tickets to the groundlings area, because if you stand there, you feel as if you are inside the play, as if you are a part of the performance, but not, separated from the actors. So that's why the area for groundlings was really popular back then. The audience really enjoyed being there. And now I would like you to watch a video speaking about the Globe Theatre nowadays. A girl is going to show us around, and while you watch the video, I would like you to find answer to two questions. What are the differences between the modern theatre and the 16th century theatre? As I have already mentioned, there were many things that have changed, so I would like you to try to notice as many as you can based on the video. And the second question is, what were the three elements of the stage? The girl is going to mention that in the video, and I would really like you to remember that. So thanks a lot, and let's move on to the video now.